July 1943, Camp Crossville, Tennessee. The summer heat pressed down like a blanket, but the soldier barely noticed it. He was too busy staring at the strange brown liquid bubbling inside a glass bottle. It fizzed and popped softly, almost alive. He held it carefully, unsure whether to drink it or study it. In 24 years, he had never seen anything like it. Just 2 years earlier, he had been fighting through the dust and starvation of North Africa, surviving on hard biscuits and bitter ersatz coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. Luxury didn't exist out there. Even water felt like a privilege. But now, here he was, in an American internment camp, holding something that felt impossible, a sweet, ice-cold drink the guards called Coca-Cola. It cost only 5 cents at the canteen. 5 cents! The guards mentioned casually that American children bought it with their weekly pocket money as if it were nothing more than a normal treat. To the soldier, it felt unreal. He had crossed deserts, watched friends die, and seen entire armies collapse. And now he stood, stunned, holding a bottle of soda that hissed and fizzed softly in his hand. In that tiny moment, he understood more about America than any briefing, weapon, or battlefield could ever teach him. And he wasn't alone. Across the vast stretch of America that same summer, 371,683 German prisoners of war were living through a quiet revolution of perception. They had been raised on Nazi propaganda, taught that America was weak, decadent, a place crumbling under moral and racial decay. Yet what they encountered in the camps was a country where ice cream was a common dessert, where candy bars appeared so often that guards sometimes handed them out without ceremony, and where sweet bottled drinks were everyday luxuries even children could afford. These simple foods, sugar, carbonation, chocolate, cream, were doing what no formal re-education program could achieve. They were dissolving ideology. They were eroding years of indoctrination, not through lectures or punishment, but through the blunt, undeniable contrast between scarcity and abundance. For men who had grown up during Germany's lean years, who had known rationing long before the war, America's casual plenty didn't feel like decadence. It felt like a revelation. Each bite of a candy bar, each sip of a cold drink, became a quiet indictment of everything they had been told. In the face of such overwhelming prosperity, the sacrifices demanded by their leaders no longer looked heroic. They looked unnecessary, meaningless. A generation of soldiers began to understand that while they had been raised to worship discipline and hardship, the Americans had mastered something far more powerful, the ability to produce so much that comfort, even for prisoners, was effortless. In the fizz of Coca-Cola and the melt of chocolate, the myth of Nazi superiority was crumbling, replaced by a new and unsettling truth. Germany had never stood a chance against a nation that could make luxury feel ordinary. The psychological transformation began the moment the Afrika Korps surrendered in Tunisia in May 1943. Approximately 250,000 German and Italian fighters, hardened desert veterans who had once pushed the British deep into Egypt under Rommel's command, anticipated American brutality and starvation exactly as the regime back home had promised. Instead, almost immediately upon capture, they encountered American K rations. These field rations, which American soldiers routinely grumbled about, seemed to the newly captured men like absolute treasures. They contained crackers, processed cheese, fruit bars, instant coffee, candy, sugar tablets, and cigarettes. For men who had subsisted on minimal rations for months, these emergency provisions were perceived as genuine feasts. At the processing camps established in North Africa, American largesse continued without pause. Military records indicate that the U.S. Army served these enemy combatants pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, and milk. These were foods that had entirely disappeared from standard German military rations years before the surrender. One German officer, speaking later to the International Red Cross, admitted the initial confusion. "We expected to be starved as prisoners. Instead, the Americans fed us better than our own army had." This profound bewilderment regarding American resources was the true commencement of their education. The transport across the Atlantic in the summer of 1943 offered the next intensive course in democratic prosperity. The prisoners traveled aboard Liberty ships, vessels mass-produced at truly unprecedented rates. At peak, one ship was completed every 42 hours. These massive ships transported up to 30,000 prisoners monthly to the United States. Naval records reveal that the prisoner rations provided aboard these crossings matched or even exceeded the standard provisions given to the regular crew. Each man received approximately 3,500 calories daily, including fresh bread, meat, vegetables, and coffee served with sugar and milk. Crucially, the standard refrigeration systems installed on American vessels kept food fresh throughout the grueling 2-week journey. Documented accounts confirmed one astonishing detail. Ice cream was served on multiple occasions during the crossing. The logbook for the USS General M.B. Stewart from July 1943 specifically notes serving the frozen dessert to prisoners on the 4th of July. The vessel utilized its own ice cream maker, capable of producing 10 gallons per batch. For these men, many of whom had not seen ice cream since before the war, this simple frozen luxury served in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean utterly defied their conceptual understanding. When the ships finally docked at ports such as Norfolk and Newport News, the German POWs encountered an America that their leadership had promised was non-existent. The Norfolk Naval Base alone covered 4,300 acres and boasted extensive waterfront facilities, handling more cargo daily than some major German ports managed in an entire week. Prisoners were briefly exposed to exchange shops meant for dock workers, catching sight of shelves overflowing with candy bars produced by major manufacturers like Mars, Hershey, and Nestlé. Procurement records from 1943 confirm these exchanges were stocked with dozens of different candy varieties, all sold at the standard national price of 5 cents for most bars. The ensuing journey inland by rail only reinforced the bizarre nature of this captivity. Unlike the crowded, miserable cattle cars typically used for transport in Europe, the German POWs traveled in standard passenger coaches. The dining cars served full meals. Documented menus from July 1943 showed dishes like fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee. The prisoners quickly realized this was not some form of special enemy treatment, but merely standard American rail service. Upon arrival, the prison camp system itself, constructed across the nation, offered living conditions that comfortably surpassed the requirements laid out by the Geneva Convention. A typical facility, like Camp Crossville, Tennessee, featured electric lights, flush toilets, hot water, and heated barracks. However, the greatest psychological impact was delivered by the camp exchanges, the PX stores. Army quartermaster records show these exchanges stocked an astonishing variety of goods. Multiple soft drink brands including Pepsi, Coca-Cola, RC Cola, and Dr. Pepper, various confections and candy bars, cigarettes and tobacco, fresh fruit, snacks, and, where adequate refrigeration permitted, ice cream. They even sold 3.2% alcohol beer. Prisoners who engaged in labor earned 80 cents daily, a rate later increased to $1. With Coca-Cola and most candy bars priced at just 5 cents, a single day's wage could purchase 16 items. This was an abundance far beyond anything imaginable in Germany, where such products, if available at all, necessitated special connections or the black market. Coca-Cola rapidly became the defining symbol of American industrial democracy. The Coca-Cola Company's wartime output was staggering, with company records indicating 5 billion bottles produced in 1943 alone. The military contract guaranteed that the drink would be available to American servicemen globally for just 5 cents. This commitment demanded a level of logistics previously unheard of. German prisoners, most of whom had never tasted the beverage before their capture, were astounded to find it utterly ubiquitous in America. Every camp received regular deliveries. Those on work details saw vending machines and coolers located everywhere: factories, schools, gas stations. They observed that Americans of all classes and ages drank it casually, often discarding bottles containing half-empty servings without a second thought. Technically minded prisoners were particularly astonished by the product's standardization. Coca-Cola tasted identical, whether consumed in Texas or in Maine, a feat of quality control and mass distribution that far exceeded anything German industry had ever achieved. The process involved manufacturing concentrated syrup in Atlanta and distributing it nationwide to various bottling plants, illustrating a level of industrial coordination that utterly challenged the Nazi assumption that America was chaotic and inefficient. Records confirm that many camps received large weekly deliveries, typically 200 to 300 cases, each containing 24 bottles. Camp Hearn in Texas, for example, consumed roughly 7,000 bottles every week during the summer of 1943. Ice cream, perhaps the most impossible luxury to the Germans, was also regularly served in camps that possessed sufficient refrigeration during the warmer months. The military considered ice cream so essential for morale that specialized ice cream ships were commissioned for the Pacific Fleet. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, the 4th of July celebration in 1943 included ice cream made right on the premises. The prisoners watched as large, hand-cranked freezers churned out gallons of the dessert using ice, salt, cream, sugar, and flavorings. The casual use of inherently scarce resources, ice in July plus vast quantities of cream and sugar, for pure entertainment, demonstrated a national prioritization that the German mind simply could not grasp. By 1944, many facilities had upgraded to electric ice cream makers, offering varieties like vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, and butter pecan, exceeding the range available in pre-war German parlors. Prisoners could purchase ice cream cups or bars for 10 cents. Army procurement records show that larger camps ordered anywhere from 50 to 100 gallons weekly during summer months. The consumption of sugar delivered an especially potent psychological blow. In Germany, sugar was strictly rationed. Civilians, if they were lucky, received 280 grams monthly. In American camps, sugar sat freely available in bowls on mess hall tables for unlimited use. Quartermaster records from 1943 to 1945 show that camps received 100-pound bags of refined sugar weekly. Camp bakeries utilized sugar liberally, ensuring that pies, cookies, and cakes regularly appeared on the menus. Coffee, tea, cereals, and desserts were sweetened in the mess halls without any restriction. An anecdote from Camp Aliceville, Alabama, powerfully illustrates this contrast. In August 1943, several hundred pounds of sugar hardened due to the humidity. A German crew would have attempted to recover it, perhaps by steaming. Instead, the American kitchen staff simply discarded the hardened supply and ordered an immediate replacement. German prisoners working in the kitchens were reportedly distressed and horrified by this casual waste. American patterns of chocolate consumption revealed the same democratic abundance. Major manufacturers like Nestlé, Mars, and Hershey produced millions of bars every month, even while the war raged. The military alone procured 380 million pounds of chocolate products throughout the conflict. The camp exchanges stocked numerous chocolate varieties available for 5 to 10 cents. Red Cross packages, distributed monthly, also supplemented the regular rations with chocolate bars, instant coffee, canned meat, processed cheese, cigarettes, and soap. These parcels represented luxuries that often surpassed what basic rations afforded German civilians. Thanksgiving in 1943 introduced the prisoners to yet another purely American spectacle of abundance. This national celebration showcased a level of organizational coordination of consumption that overshadowed German organizational efforts. Army records confirm that every prison camp served the traditional Thanksgiving dinner: roast turkey, mashed potatoes with gravy, stuffing, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. The logistical challenge of providing turkey dinners to 425,000 POWs, in addition to millions of American servicemen worldwide, highlighted America's unparalleled organizational capacity. Furthermore, the fact that enemy prisoners received the identical meal as American soldiers emphasized an equality of treatment that directly contradicted Nazi racial ideology. Christmas 1943 brought unexpected generosity from the American civilian population. Church groups, civic organizations, and individuals sent packages to the German POWs. The American Friends Service Committee alone distributed 50,000 packages to enemy prisoners. These typically contained candy, homemade cookies, toiletries, books, games, writing materials, and cigarettes. Local communities often provided additional direct support. In Hearne, Texas, church groups delivered cookies and candy to Camp Hearne. This civilian kindness shown toward men fighting against their country fundamentally challenged Nazi ideology, demonstrating American strength through mercy rather than vengeance. As domestic labor shortages grew more severe, German POWs were increasingly assigned work details outside the secure confines of the camps, allowing them to witness American food production firsthand. By 1944, roughly 100,000 prisoners were working in agriculture and food processing, gaining intimate knowledge of the sheer scale of American abundance. In Michigan orchards, prisoners picked cherries, many destined for maraschino production, the bright garnishes often used to top ice cream sundaes. The sheer volume was staggering. Single orchards produced tons of fruit intended only for decorative purposes. At canning facilities, prisoners observed quality control standards that often rejected perfectly edible food due to minor imperfections. Del Monte records from 1944 indicate that approximately 15% of fruit was rejected for canning due to minor blemishes or size irregularities, usually diverted to animal feed. The waste, though functional within the American system, was astonishing to the German observers. In Colorado and Nebraska, sugar beet processing revealed agricultural mechanization far beyond German achievement. Single American farms produced more sugar beets than entire German regions. The prisoners learned that American sugar production, sourced from both beets and cane, reached approximately 7 million tons annually, explaining the constant casual abundance they had observed in the mess halls. Working near schools, some prisoners witnessed early versions of organized school lunch programs, with children receiving hot meals that included protein, milk, and vegetables. The logistics of daily milk delivery to thousands of schools demonstrated an organizational capability that Germany could not even muster for its own critical military supplies. Some school cafeterias even offered ice cream for additional purchase. The concept of American children buying frozen desserts at school while German children faced severe food shortages created a profound and lasting impact on the prisoner observers. When minimum security prisoners ate at local American diners under supervision, they encountered democratic abundance in its purest form. These small restaurants offered menus comparable to those found in elite German establishments, yet they were available to anyone with modest funds. Documented 1944 prices showed a hamburger for 25 cents, Coca-Cola for 5 cents, a slice of pie for 15 cents, and a full dinner special for 65 to 75 cents. The equality of service was striking. A bank president and a factory worker might sit at adjacent counter stools, served by the same waitress, eating identical meals for the same price. This contradicted every facet of German social stratification. As the POWs gained access to American publications, they internalized production statistics that dwarfed Germany's wartime efforts and often its peacetime peaks. American production figures documented in 1944 included approximately 7 million tons of sugar, 380 million pounds of chocolate products purchased by the military alone, and over 500 million gallons of ice cream. In contrast, Germany during the same period saw chocolate primarily reserved for military priority, sugar heavily rationed, mostly from beets, milk severely rationed, and soft drink production minimal. Ice cream was virtually non-existent. The documented disparity was undeniable. The average prisoner consumption between 1943 and 1946 included 3,300 to 3,600 daily calories, 4 pounds of sugar monthly, 32 ounces of meat weekly, and a quart of milk daily, with ice cream regularly served during the summer. German civilian rations during the same period were restricted to 1,200 to 1,500 daily calories, 280 grams of sugar monthly, when available, and 10.5 ounces of often unavailable meat weekly. These differences were not mere propaganda, but documented, observable reality. Enemy prisoners ate better than German civilians. The abundance extended beyond just Coca-Cola. The prisoners discovered a competitive soft drink industry featuring Pepsi Cola, RC Cola, Dr. Pepper, Orange Crush, and many regional brands. The sheer variety of companies producing similar products demonstrated a market abundance impossible under Germany's controlled economy. Bottling plants, efficient and standardized in their technology, operated in every major American city, producing millions of bottles annually. This single industry's output of billions of bottles per year exceeded the total production of entire consumer sectors in Germany. Even American rationing, implemented during the war, highlighted the gulf between the two societies. Americans complained about their sugar allowance of 2 pounds monthly per person, which was still more than triple the German allowance. Meat rationing, at 28 ounces weekly per person, exceeded what many Germans received monthly. Records show that despite restrictions, Americans purchased 74 pounds of sugar per capita in 1944, 10 times the consumption rate in Germany. The arrival of spring 1945 brought the final crushing ideological blow. German POWs in America watched newsreels showing American GIs advancing through Germany, distributing chewing gum and chocolate to German children. The sheer joy of those children receiving American candy that their own government could not provide completed the demolition of the Nazi myth. The contrast was stark. American soldiers, fighting deep inside enemy territory, carried enough resources to give them away, while the German state, which promised global triumph, delivered only starvation. Newsreels of concentration camp liberations further compounded the ideological collapse, showing American troops sharing their rations with skeletal survivors, demonstrating a fundamental humanity toward the victims of the regime the prisoners had served. Between 1945 and 1946, the German POWs returned to a homeland that was utterly destroyed. Many had actually gained significant weight during their American captivity, while their families back home had suffered weight loss and starvation. Medical examinations confirmed that German prisoners generally returned healthier than when they were captured. This physical evidence, American plenty versus German deprivation, was undeniable. Many former prisoners brought home their final Red Cross packages containing coffee, chocolate, and canned goods that instantly became cherished family treasures. Children who had forgotten the taste of chocolate received Hershey bars from fathers who had regularly consumed ice cream while in prison. These former POWs transformed into unexpected advocates for the subsequent Marshall Plan. They had witnessed firsthand an American abundance that was not based on a zero-sum game, but on prosperity through production rather than conquest. Their testimony that Americans could genuinely afford to rebuild their defeated enemies was crucial in influencing German acceptance of American aid. They understood that American power derived from a productive capacity so immense that it could afford to waste food while simultaneously fighting a global war. This profound shift in mental modeling, embracing creation over conquest, shaped West Germany's future economic approach. The German economic miracle of the 1950s was partially founded on the knowledge harvested inside American prison camps. Former POWs, who had observed consumer abundance, standardization, distribution networks, and American production methods, applied these lessons directly to German Reconstruction. They learned that mass production could render luxuries affordable, that standardization ensured both efficiency and quality, and that consumer abundance fostered political stability. They realized that industrial democracy possessed the capability to utterly outproduce authoritarian control. These vital lessons, delivered through a cup of Coca-Cola and a dish of ice cream, shaped a generation of political and business leaders in Germany. Arnold Kramer, a leading historian focusing on German POWs in America, concluded that food abundance was the central driver of their ideological transformation. His comprehensive research confirmed that the casual nature of American plenty achieved what formal re-education programs could never accomplish: the complete demolition of Nazi superiority myths. In post-war interviews and memoirs, former German POWs consistently identified the experience of abundance as transformative. An Africa Corps officer stated in 1975, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to enemies. That's when we knew we had lost more than a war. We had lost our entire worldview." Another veteran, interviewed decades later, recalled, "My first Coca-Cola was like drinking the future. It was sweet, fizzing, completely unnecessary, and available to anyone for a nickel. That drink contained everything Nazi Germany wasn't: joyful, democratic, abundant." The men who arrived believing in German superiority and American weakness left as witnesses to democratic prosperity. The success of this re-education program stemmed from observation, not instruction. They saw American society functioning at its peak efficiency while treating enemies with dignity. The food was crucial because it was universal. Everyone understands the relationship between hunger and satisfaction. Weight gain and improved health were visible, undeniable metrics. Every meal, every soft drink, every ice cream dessert became a practical lesson in American industrial capacity, standardization, and democratic opportunity. The children of these prisoners grew up hearing fantastic stories of American plenty, tales that were later validated as West Germany recovered and American products flooded the market. Drawn by their fathers' accounts of impossible abundance, many of these children later studied or worked in America, finding that the reality matched the persistent tales. Supermarkets stocked with incredible variety, soda fountains serving elaborate sundaes, and candy aisles offering dozens of choices. This multi-generational effect ensured that West German business culture absorbed the vital lessons of standardization, quality, and consumer abundance. Today, Coca-Cola is ubiquitous in Germany. McDonald's operates over 1,400 restaurants, and ice cream is an ordinary treat. The transformation from scarcity to abundance, seeded in those World War II prison camps, is complete. Yet the powerful historical lesson endures. Ideological transformation, achieved through demonstration, kindness, and plenty, rather than cruelty and deprivation. The German prisoners, who couldn't understand why there was ice cream and Coca-Cola in their American detention camps, were suddenly face to face with democracy's quiet, peaceful weapon. They found themselves inside a society so wealthy, so confident, that it could share its abundance even with the men sent to destroy it. The ice cream sundae, with its syrup, whipped cream, nuts, and bright red cherry, felt almost unreal to them. Each ingredient alone was something many German children had never tasted. Together, they formed a kind of edible symbol of American luxury. And the fact that prisoners could finish one bowl and casually ask for another, while their families back home faced hunger and rationing, exposed the complete failure of the Nazi system more clearly than any speech ever could. What these men tasted wasn't just dessert, it was democracy. It was freedom translated into flavor, into texture, into everyday generosity. They arrived believing in a regime that promised glory through hardship and suffering. They returned home with a different story, that real strength came from a society that valued comfort, creativity, and the ability to give freely. Many of them became unexpected ambassadors of this truth. They told their families and neighbors that America's real power wasn't in its tanks or bombers, but in the astonishing fact that it could offer ice cream to its enemies without hesitation. This simple abundance shattered years of propaganda. It proved that prosperity doesn't come from conquest or sacrifice demanded by a dictator. It comes from freedom, industry, and choice. The war had been fought with bullets, planes, and steel, but in the end, something softer delivered a deeper victory: a bowl of ice cream, a bottle of Coca-Cola. A candy bar was handed out by a guard who didn't think twice about it. Those hot summer days in the American camps produced a transformation that weapons never could. Hearts and minds were changed not by force, but by generosity. The prisoners returned to Germany with a new understanding of the world, carrying the quiet, radical idea that democracy was not only stronger, it was also sweeter. And in that sweetness, shared so casually, America won one of the war's most lasting victories. It turned former enemies into believers through the simple act of offering a frozen dessert to those who had once marched against it.